Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Deep Gripping Reality podcast. Today, I'm super excited because I'm testing technology that is the future of podcasting. It's at least the future of business meetings, but very possibly the future of podcasting as well.
You're listening to the Deep Gripping Reality podcast.
The Deep Gripping Reality is brought to you by marketingstrategy.com. Check it out. Today, I will be joined by Dr. Chuck Fox. He works for a company called ESI. And long story short, I'll let him explain it in a little bit, but he's basically a guy who has been playing around in the Metaverse. I say playing around, but it's what he does for a living, since before it was called the Metaverse. He does these remote inspections, live remote inspections. Basically, they take a bunch of data and from like an accident scene or something, right? They use scanners and technology, and then they rebuild and animate that technology in live in a virtual reality space. And the cool part is you can walk around in that virtual reality space and then see the other person right there in real time. So this is kind of a kickoff. You'll notice I have a big welcome message up here for Dr. Fox when he does come. But what we're testing today, I figured if I'm going to have a virtual reality expert as a guest on the Deep Gripping Reality, the very least that I can do is do it as my very first episode in the Metaverse. Okay, so here's where I am. I'm using the Oculus Quest 2, the Q2 as people lovingly call it. And what you see in front of you is Horizon Workrooms, or Meta's Workroom. And it's a virtual meeting space where I have this giant whiteboard that's virtual reality. It's real, it's there, but it's in virtual reality. And I can actually pull that up on my desk. I'm going to show all these features to Dr. Fox when he gets in, because he's never used this specific meeting space. But I can pull it up on my desk in front of me in the physical space, in my digital space that's in front of me. And I can also, it says, oh, look, I've got a meeting in 1 minute. I can either like actually go up to that space, or I can either go up to that space or I can do it on my desk. I can literally write on my desk and pull up a whiteboard there. So it's really crazy, really cool stuff, great technology, and frankly, something that I'm super excited about. So this should be really interesting. I'm really excited to see how this pans out. I can change the seating layout, so I can have it be conversational. I can have it presentational style, so it'd be good for classrooms. I can have it presentational style, so it'd be good for classrooms. And it'll automatically adjust to the number of people in the room. Another thing that I really like about it is that this screen over here that you see is for people who don't have a virtual reality headset. So multiple people can join like a Zoom meeting. Who's this? I see somebody in virtual reality.
Hey.
How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
You like my message on the whiteboard for you?
Oh, that's great. Let's see. Oh, there we are. Welcome to the Deep Gripping Reality podcast, first episode on the Metaverse. Wow, that is awesome.
So this is your first time in Workspace, right?
This is, well, so I set it up the other day. Yesterday, I guess I jumped in and set up my space. But yeah, this is my first time with someone else in here. I checked out your room. It looks like maybe you added a deer with VR glasses on the wall since I was here last.
Yeah. So here's what's cool about this is I can change the layout of the room in real time. So now we're at a U shape.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cool stuff that I like about this. And I finally figured out how to record stuff. So you're a lot tanner in VR.
Yes. Well, I decided I should tan myself up a little bit just because, I'm feeling like I didn't get enough sun this summer. So
that's fair.
COVID and all,
That's fair. I respect that. But I was just kind of talking to myself because I was testing the recording functionality. So this is, let's get nerdy here.
Sure. Absolutely.
So I love the virtual space that this is. I haven't tried any of the other ones other than this one. Since Meta is, kind of going all in on this, I figured I should probably get familiar with it. So what I found is that if you pull up on your menu, if you pull up the record functionality, you can record this session, and then it'll save it. And I didn't realize this, but and I'm sure a lot of my listeners don't know, because I don't know how many Oculus Quest users I have, but it's run on an Android system. So it's very easy to plug it into a computer and use it just like Android. You go to Oculus and you go to videos, and you have the video file right there. It's an MP4.
Wow. Oh, hey, sweet. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yes. So then I can use that as video for if I want to put it on YouTube or on, whatever I want, whatever platform I want. But then I have different technology that allows me to strip the audio from it. So I can use that for the podcast.
Perfect. Hey, that's awesome. Yeah. So, the space is interesting because we use a common space for a lot of our interactions with 3D data. So, for example, it wouldn't be uncommon for us to laser scan some object, put it in a 3D space and interact with it. But we haven't done that in the context of a space like this.
Yeah.
And the avatars we use are very simple. They look like a mannequin that you put a wig on or something, right? And the name floats next to it, and we can communicate with one another. You can interact, but I'm kind of loving these little avatars. Like, it's got my hand motion in here,
and it tracks it really well.
Yeah, and it's tracking like our mouth, movement is actually really good. Like, that's actually effective. I can see facial expression. Like, I'm really impressed with, with what Facebook is doing with this. This is really cool.
As long as you don't try to look under the desk or look down, because it gets weird when you realize you don't have any legs.
It's
just you're literally a floating torso. In fact, I don't.
Right. Yeah.
I'm curious if I go over to the. Hold on, I'm going to pop over to the whiteboard real quick here. Says don't forget your controllers, because you have to use those to do this. But
I don't have them in my hands.
That's okay. So I'm actually standing at the whiteboard now, and I have no idea how I look on yours.
Yeah, that's a little freaky. You have no legs.
Yeah, neither do you back there. But I can. So the way that the whiteboard works, it's really cool. You can't see them where you are, but there's little like footprints, and you can just click on, and it'll let you jump to whatever area you want to go to, and then I can just write. I flip my controller over.
Oh, that's
and
really
write
cool.
on
It turns into like a pen in your hand. I see it. Yeah.
And then you can also choose your colors. So there's like 4 colors you can choose from. And what's really neat about it too is that back at the seat, if I pop back over to my seat here, you can look down on your desk, and there's 2 little icons in front of you. And the lower right, and one of them is a pass-through, so you can actually see your real keyboard, and the other is putting that dry erase board right in front of you.
Ah, very cool.
So
I love this is really neat.
Yeah, so what's really cool about it is you can connect your computer to your Oculus, either wirelessly or wired. If you have to have a really good Wi-Fi signal to do it wirelessly. But then you can share files in real time. So you could take images and you could put them up on. This looks amazing on my side, by the way. I just see you like turning around.
I'm like finding my controllers, right? Yeah. Because I have it set up for the hand. Oh boy, it's very confused about my hands.
This looks amazing on my side. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. My controller cables got a little messed up here.
So what's cool about this is that if you when you have it there, you can flip the controller upside down, and you can use it to write, and it'll have you write on the whiteboard. So I can at any time do a screen grab of this and basically save that whiteboard for the future, and that whiteboard stays there until we either delete it or until we change it. I mean, it's really, really crazy how realistic this stuff is. I see you trying to write, but I'm not seeing anything show up on the board yet.
It's like temporarily.
It makes you okay. So you have to have a clear space.
I see what it's doing.
Desk.
It still wants
me to draw a circle.
Still calibrating here.
Yep.
Yeah. It's okay. Now I'm ready to draw.
Yeah. So now you can flip it upside down and use it as a pen, and you should be able to draw whatever you want. There you go.
Okay, I'm not very good at it yet.
It takes a little practice. What I found, surprisingly enough, is it's actually easier to draw in the virtual space on the whiteboard than it is on your desk. It's weird. It's really, really cool stuff though, because you can put pictures if it's connected to your desktop. You can add pictures. In fact, Facebook just announced yesterday that they're going to have an update to workspaces that they're rolling out slowly, where you'll be able to customize the work this meeting room we're in, and have your company's logo on the wall and whatever posters you want on the wall, so it's more like an actual meeting space.
Ah, very cool. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. And the cool thing about this, and the interesting thing is, oh, there we go. It's resetting my desk here.
I see. It's funny because on my screen it says pass through, and you look like you're in a very calm, meditative state.
Yeah, it's like it is. It's in a pass through mode here. There we go. Got it. So, the thing that I'm noticing here right away, even though I'm pretty clumsy in it, which is pretty normal for me, is that the time that it takes to become comfortable in these spaces is actually really short.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been true since we first started creating these spaces and encountering them virtually. Like, we jump in the space, we'll have a few people, we'll have a piece of geometry perhaps that we want to interact with. And within a minute or two, people have become comfortable with the space and are measuring things and doing things and interacting with the space, just like, you would if you'd walked up and encountered this object. And it is just so crazy how quickly our minds are completely okay with this. Like, we're just fine with this virtual space.
Isn't that crazy? It's what I found that's really cool, especially about the Oculus. So here's my experience with VR, because I'm going to explain mine, and then I want to explain why you are a VR god to me. So I can't wait to pick your brain. My experience in VR, after you and I started talking about 2 years ago or whatever it was, I ended up getting a PlayStation VR. And,
right.
It's using technology from I think the PS3 or something that has these little glowing balls on the end of it. And it's just, it's clumsy, but it works. And the thing that I hated about it was that you had to have these super long cables, and they were really thick, and it was a pain to set up, and it was definitely not mobile. I couldn't bring it anywhere. And so my wife overheard, we had a cousin who was saying, hey, I'm thinking about getting the PSVR for my kids. But I've heard that the Oculus Quest is better. What do you think? And I said, well, I've never had it. But my wife overheard me say the Quest is going to be integral to the Metaverse and is going to be the future of doing business. She overheard me say that. Right. And so she's like, well, guess we got to go get you a Quest. I went, what? And then I went, I love you, right? So this was, and the funny part is she did that on her birthday.
So very nice.
Yeah. So for her birthday,
cool.
She spent about $500 on Quest stuff for me, which was cool. But
you have an awesome wife.
I do have no idea, dude. 21 years we've been together, and she's my soulmate. But it was cool because then I immediately thought, okay, first off, I'm a gamer, so I love the idea of that. But then I thought, I want to see the productivity side. I want to see this. I want to see the meetings. Yeah. I want to see, and I want to see if it's practical to do some of the things. Like, could this replace Zoom?
Yeah.
Could this replace any of that stuff? And what's cool is you see that black box that's floating over there to your right. Mm-hmm. That is a screen. So if you had somebody who didn't have an Oculus or any VR and just had a desk, I've already had one meeting in here where there's a person there.
Uh-huh. Right. They're on the screen. They just pop in as if they were in Zoom or Teams or
and
something
they see
like
us
that,
like this. They see the whiteboard, and they can see any files that we decided to share.
Right. That is awesome. That is so cool.
So it's crazy, and I've really liked it. I love how responsive it is. As you said, it tracks everything really, really well.
Right.
There's a game that I highly recommend that is so freaking neat. It's called the Hand Lab or Hand. It's I want to say it's Hand Geometry Lab or something like that. Uh-huh. But basically, the idea of the game is just to demonstrate that you don't need controllers. So part of it is stacking blocks. Part of it is picking up a ball and pushing buttons. And it's such a fun, cool thing. It's mind-boggling. So when I bragged about having you on the Deep Gripping Reality, one of the things that I was excited about is you were in the Metaverse and helping create a version of the Metaverse before it existed.
Sure.
With that.
In fact, I don't think we appreciated, when we started down the road of VR that it was going to lead here. That was several years ago, when we thought, hey, we're collecting all this 3D data and we're interacting with all these 3D things, and it just felt limiting to interact with those things on a screen, on a
Yeah.
flat screen where it was like peering at the world through this little window,
Yeah.
and it's like we could be in it, like it's 3D geometry, right? And so we headed down this road of developing a way to interact with the geometry on a one-to-one basis. And of course that was VR. And I should find some old pictures. Like we had one of the Oculus first generation development toolkits,
Nice.
where we had the really low res Oculus and we were interacting in space, and it was really, really amazing. We did that a long time before we really thought about interacting with each other,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it was very solo kind of thing. You went in the Oculus and you interacted with the geometry, and we were even curating animated experiences, so we could put you in an aircraft that was going through an accident sequence. We could put you in a ground vehicle that was going to, maybe run a red light and have a collision. And we had data for all these things because that's the business we're in. We're reconstructing accidents. And so
Yeah.
being able to re-experience that as a driver, as a passenger, as a witness, had a lot of value to us. What we didn't think about until more recently was the collaborative potential. It's maybe about a year ago
Mm-hmm.
with the pandemic and restricted travel, and we have 3 VR labs around the company. We have one here in Atlanta, we have one in Ames, and one in the Chicago area. But people couldn't visit them, because of COVID.
It's a lot
And
of travel.
so that exactly. And so that's when we thought, well, let's just travel, using our connectivity. And so I guess, we sort of maybe fell backwards into the metaverse, but that you're right, Stephen. I mean, that's what we've been doing for a while now.
Yeah. So to kind of explain what it is you guys do is you're hired by firms
Hmm.
in sometimes in personal injury, wrongful death, in various cases. And
Right.
your job is to go collect as much data as you can. Sometimes that's data, visual data. Sometimes it's using scanner technology. Sometimes it's analyzing photographs or actual, documentation. And then you basically consolidate all of that information and you make data visual. Um,
Correct.
Sometimes that's printing out 3D models. Sometimes most of the time it sounds like that's creating 3D spaces or seeing that visually in a 3D way and interacting with objects and essentially taking something where there may not have been a witness and making it using 1000% solid data, recreating it so that you can witness the unwitnessed.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So, in any sort of event, there is an organized way to go about recreating it, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
first thing is the geometry of the space that this event occurred within, right? So it perhaps it's an intersection where, there was a vehicle accident. Well, we can go out and take laser scanners in the field, and we can capture the geometry of that space within a millimeter or two's accuracy. So we can place every object that's in that scene in a very specific way. Um, that's kind of the initial stage where we would get in and interact with it for example, in a virtual space. And that's sort of a dumb space in a way, in that it's just the geometry. Nothing moves, nothing interacts, nothing does anything, but it is a geometrically accurate space. Then, the next layer of the process is rebuilding the motion of things in that. So,
Yep. The
ground
physics of it.
vehicles move, exactly, pedestrians
Yep.
move, all those things. And so that's where, security camera footage and dash cam footage and EDR downloads from vehicles and things like that start to give us the dynamic information we need to start putting motion to objects in that scene. And it sort of comes together piece by piece in that fashion. And being able to interact with that at different stages, to be able to occupy different points of view, a driver's seat, a passenger seat, a witness who said, oh, I saw everything and I was standing right here. Well, okay, let's see if that witness's statement jibes with what we know to be true from perhaps motion data we have from a security camera or something like that. So it really does allow us to reconstitute past events in an accurate fashion. While that might not seem as exciting as perhaps predicting the future or something like that, it's having an accurate depiction of something that happened in the past can be exquisitely valuable to our clients who are trying to figure out, what happened in a particular loss.
Yeah. So, essentially what it comes down to in any case like that is liability. Is this the fault of the manufacturer? Did the seatbelt break, for example? Was there, you see what's really, sorry, Facebook decided to listen to me for no reason. That's one of the downsides to being a beta tester for a lot of this stuff. It's like, hey, listen, no, if I forgot that I can literally tell, I'm not going to say the word FB. I can call for it and tell it to start recording.
Oh,
and
right.
It will. So it's kind of crazy. But anyway,
that's cool.
It's pretty neat stuff. It's like a virtual
we
assistant.
were saying stuff that was so cool that Facebook wanted
to. It's like, we need to listen to this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've seen a lot of the animations that your teams come up with from years ago, and it puts Pixar to shame. Like I mean, it's photorealistic in a lot of ways.
Yes.
So you have some amazing, I want to call them graphic designers, because that's essentially what they look like, but they're data scientists in a lot of cases. So
they are.
It's so phenomenal to see that technology. I felt honored because when Mark Zuckerberg did his big announcement about Meta, I thought I got a sneak preview of what this could be, because what is really cool is that with ESI Live, you're giving people the opportunity to come together and be a part of a remote inspection process and say, hey, let me see this part from that angle. Let me see in real time. And so it's really it's cool because people are being able to interact from anywhere. I could be in Hong Kong or Beijing or whatever, take part in something that I can't physically be at, and that a video of, I can't imagine how many people went, God, I would have asked this question, or I wish I would have been there because this is something I totally would have brought up. And so that is such a valuable experience, and you are light years ahead. I think that if for some reason you decided you didn't want to work where you do now, Meta would hire you in a heartbeat. Just from your experience.
Maybe I'll tell you, it's funny. Like you sort of primed me to wax nostalgic here, Stephen, because I remember it must have been about 1995, sitting in a conference room in Ames, in the research park. And at that time, the team that I was part of had people in it that are part of the team here now. And I remember seeing the Toy Story trailer come out, and
nice.
We talk about working in the 3D environment, like there was sort of like Toy Story and post Toy Story.
Of course,
it's kind of like,
yeah, of course,
kind of like BC and AD, right, in terms of the timeline, right? And we were and so we were working, pre Toy Story in 3D. We knew a lot about 3D, and we were manipulating, even though it was like there weren't laser scanners and there weren't drones capturing things. It was very, very, basic, rudimentary 3D work. We were familiar with that space when really none of the world was until Toy Story. And we saw that trailer, and everybody, I think there was like a minute of silence after we saw this trailer. And it was just like, oh, this is unbelievable. And that theme, the nostalgia of that time and working in that space is sort of happening again with Meta. Because here we are working in a 3D space where we're working really hard to reconstruct reality that was maybe an event that happened a year ago or 2 years ago. We're trying to reconstruct that.
Yeah, it's not like you can just go straight there and it's the exact same. Like weather happens and construction happens.
We might laser scan an intersection and it's mostly accurate, but signs of change since the accident, or somebody pruned a tree or something. And so we still have to go back and fix it based upon the photographs from maybe the time of the event, right? And, and the rest of the world, Facebook and Microsoft and companies are looking at this. I think are thinking about it much more of like a fantasy space, just like the
Like
space
this.
we're in. You can be in
Yeah.
this super cool space that like is just a figment of someone's imagination, and that's super powerful too.
Yeah.
Just like Pixar's Toy Story was this amazing illustration of what you could do in 3D. I think Meta and mesh and some of these things that are happening now in the more commercialized 3D space are going to popularize it because they live up to the fictions that we would love to have in our lives. But at the same token, it's going to shine a lot of light on what we do and enable us to do even more in the scientific and engineering space.
Yeah, so I'm so happy you bring that up because there is, I mean, obviously, I don't own this conference room. I kind of wish I did because it's pretty amazing and the view is spectacular. Instead, I'm sitting in my son's bedroom. So,
Right.
It's a little different. But what's cool about it is you're in a completely different time zone, in a completely different state, and we're able to have this as if I'm sitting right next to you. In fact, if I really wanted to make it awkward, I can do this. Say hi. How are you?
And here we are, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
I don't even know if we can shake hands. We can try.
There we go. Right.
But
maybe we fist bump.
There you go. Boom. So here's what's funny about that. Facebook's working on a haptic glove. Have you seen this thing?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh my God. It uses like fluid and liquid and stuff, and like just seeing the demos of when you pick up a ball or when you play, like they were in two remote spaces and they were thumb wrestling. Like we couldn't do that if we tried to thumb wrestle right now.
Just like it's like you can maybe
there you go. Yeah. Like I think I won.
Yeah.
So. But it's crazy where the technology is going, and I think it's so. I mean, there's been haptic suits for a long time and things like that, but it's so cool because it's going far beyond gaming and into a realistic, practical world. And people like yourself who have access to dev kits are able to just take that technology and sprint with it. I think that between that and Microsoft's HoloLens and their AR technology. It's insane. It is just crazy. Yeah. I mean, the virtual space that we're in right now, Facebook talked about how they're getting to a point and they're working on technology where your glasses will be able to scan a room and then reproduce that room in a virtual space. And you guys do that already, but I'm sure it takes a lot more time than just putting on glasses and scanning a room.
Exactly. And it's, it's getting quicker all the time. We actually just tested a scanner the other day that while not as small as glasses, it's sort of a thing that you put on your shoulders, like an it looks like some sort of exoskeleton or something.
Nice.
It allows you just to walk around a room and scan it. So in the speed in which you can walk around, you can have a high fidelity, model of that space.
That's crazy.
Much higher fidelity than you would really need to do the kind of thing we're doing here. So that technology, I mean, it isn't even around the corner. It's here. It's just not generally used, commercially yet. And it's this scanner is an $80,000 piece of equipment. So
exactly.
Your average person is going to have it, but for an organization like us that's using it for scientific data, that's well within the realm of something we would consider using.
Yeah. So that's the other that you brought up something very interesting. Having this essentially exosuit or whatever. We're talking about massive technology that didn't exist 5-10 years ago. And how do you consolidate that into a piece of headwear? You know what I mean? And so for people who want this in a commercially viable way, they have to understand we're literally having to create technology. Not we, but I mean the world that is doing this is having to create the technology that simply doesn't exist. You can't, I'm sure you can, but it's expensive to take a supercomputer essentially and put it in a piece of eyewear.
Right. Exactly. And I think, you're seeing, but you've constantly seen the march in that direction in the technology space. I mean, an iPhone now is a laser scanner.
Yeah.
You can laser scan a space with an iPhone, and honestly, it works pretty good. And you can sort of say, if you're in the business of professionally laser scanning things, it's like, okay, yeah, it's a little rough, but 10 years ago we couldn't laser scan anything, right? It
Mm-mm.
wasn't even a thing. And
Yeah.
so the speed with which these technologies are getting into the hands of consumers that can then mobilize that into something super creative is happening really fast.
Yep. Yep. In fact, also in the same announcement that talked about Meta fixing this space up and making it more personal, the same article. Did I send you that article? I wanted to, and I don't know if I did.
I don't think so, but I could have overlooked it.
So there's this great article that just came out. It was on Engadget or something like that. But it was talking about how they also announced that the Oculus's newest update, which came out yesterday, if you have like an iPhone 11 or higher running on whatever, you can now be playing a game, and instead of having to have a green screen, it'll show you standing in front of the game playing it. So like Beat Saber or whatever. And so just you literally set up your phone behind you and then you start playing, and they see what you see, but they also see your body in front of it looking like an idiot playing the game. So it's absolutely crazy how this technology works and how well and how fast it's developing. I'm excited. I think it's a cool time.
Yeah, it is a super cool time. And, it's interesting because being someone who, utilizes these spaces, it's not lost on us that we've got to keep up the pace, because when 2 or 3 years ago, when we were doing this and nobody else was, you can sort of be, proud of yourself and lazy about what you're doing because you're sort of under the radar. But this technology is enabling lots of people to do this. And, one reaction to that is to, be afraid of it. Oh, geez, why'd they do this? We've got this great thing going, right? But my reaction, I think, is much more excited about this because it's really fun to see what is going to happen in these spaces. And you were talking about it in your last podcast. What does this mean for, like, what's real estate in the metaverse? What's, it's common. Like at least I lament, like, golly, I wish I'd have been alive, 50 years ago when there was this great opportunity to invest and nobody knew about it. Well, we're standing at that precipice right now. Like, here's this huge opportunity in the metaverse, and there will be people that figure this out and capitalize on it and come up with some creative notion of, value in these virtual spaces. And those are the next, Mark Zuckerbergs, really.
So have you heard about, you're talking to my heart there. I am a big believer that he who creates the platform and the marketplace is the one who will make the money and will succeed most. Have you heard of Decentraland?
Yeah. In fact, you had mentioned Decentraland
I don't remember
we chatted a couple weeks ago. Yeah. And I jumped on there and looked around, and honestly, that has just planted this seed that's like, oh my gosh, like I will be negligent if I don't figure out, something really cool, because this is, these are like really, really interesting opportunities, I think, that are redefining what places, are like. What's it mean to occupy this space, like this conference room we've talked about? You hear people all the time talking about, all the things that ail, the planet, and, all the global warming, political issues, and I just want to leave this planet. Well, this is it. Like, here's the vehicle.
Welcome to the other world.
right now. And I keep, I think of like Ready Player One, which I can't remember when that book was written. It was, surprisingly a long time ago.
Yeah.
And here we are. We're in it.
It's here. I don't know. Another good example is, have you seen Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds?
I haven't yet, but you were mentioning it on your last podcast, so I put it on my list now, movies I have to watch.
It's hilarious. It's definitely worth the watch. In fact, you'll appreciate this. So my first true experience in the Oculus was I downloaded the YouTube app. And I thought, you know what? Instead of having a big 3D experience, I'm going to try a 2D experience. So I purchased a movie through Google Play or whatever, and it was Venom: Let There Be Carnage, because I'm a comic book nerd. And I sat back and being able to expand that to the size of a movie theater screen in front of me was awe-inspiring. And having that surround sound thanks to the headset, and it was just insane because here I am as if I was sitting in a movie theater watching a video that I bought on YouTube.
Right, right,
It was
right.
like, so on that note, here's what I think is going to be interesting is, so they say that this is a creator's world. The metaverse is going to be he who is able to create, especially art and, architecture and things like that, is the one who will be very, very well off in the metaverse. So I think that part of that will be interactive experiences, and probably already are, to where you could take your favorite YouTube videos or your favorite movies or whatever. And for example, instead of having this big thing behind me where we have this whiteboard, I would have a YouTube video I could hit play and we could watch it. So we're watching a 2D video in the 3D space with people next to us. And that's already exists now. It's already something that they do. But imagine if you had a virtual gallery for ESI Live, where you could, if clients wanted to know the kind of things you guys have done in the past as far as recreation and that sort of thing, and you could bring them into the gallery and literally let them watch your YouTube videos.
Yep.
Just up on the wall. Yep. They could point to the one they want to watch, and then it'd start playing, and it'd be like an art gallery, but in the virtual world, watching 2D videos, way more impressive than YouTube.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. I think that's true too. The other thing that I've thought about that I think is probably really cool. Are you familiar with the artwork of Android Jones?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so this is an artist who has taken this, I guess what I would say is this amazing kind of 2D, what you would think of as 2D art, and he makes 3D things out of it, like out of geometry and things. And they're just absolutely mind-blowing. And what I've thought about is like, what if you could enter a piece of Android Jones's artwork? Like you could take what is in his head when he's creating something like this and actually experience that, through a virtual vehicle, like we're in now, like be able to actually enter a piece of art. And I think there will be, things like that are simply experiences we can't have in the physical world. They would be too expensive to create, or your ability to levitate and move in 3 dimensions just doesn't exist because of gravity. And when you take that away and you could do, like, imagine like these experiences and what they might do for us, what art means to us, in a virtual space, I think takes on maybe a new, I guess a new dimension, pun intended, right? Because it would be amazing. And so, I mean, just, and this is just scratching the surface. I mean, we haven't even had a chance to, play in this space much.
Yeah.
I mean, those of us that are lucky have been here a little while, but it's a very little while.
Yeah. And now you have access, now that more people's minds are being open to this world, you guys are going to get access to stuff that you didn't even imagine, because, we're limited by our own brains. So it's like a collective think,
Right.
I think, so I saw, when you said that, it made me think about, I recently got on Reddit for one of the companies I work with, and there was a thing in there from Decentraland where an architect had said, I made this beautiful Zen home. It's currently for sale on Decentraland, and it was a video collection of just basically giving you a walkthrough of what that virtual space looked like. And so in that way, that architectural piece of art can be owned as an NFT, and you can go in and physically experience, well, not physically, but virtually experience it. But what I like about when you said that there were physical limitations, I'm imagining in my mind, how cool would it be if it started as you're feeling a skydiving experience, and then you go into the water and you're surrounded by the ocean, you see an octopus, swimming guy or whatever, or in the bottom of the ocean, then you go under and you're surrounded by lava, and it goes straight through the earth. I mean, it's just it's mind-blowing, the possibilities and experiences that we'll be able to have. And
I mean, we think about real estate in this traditional sense, right? Like a space that, you own, that's limited by a variety of things, and absolutely could be unlimited, in the metaverse. And so what's that mean? And like you mentioned NFT, like, well, so an economy is developing around this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's it going to look like? How do you capitalize in a space where, literally there's no limits, right? I mean, it's a
Yep.
very exciting time that we're in, and this is a super exciting frontier.
It's so crazy though when we talk about. I'm kind of backtracking a little because I started thinking about this as you were saying that. Just take a look at your hands for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Now think back to the Pixar stuff.
Right.
Look how far we've come in just a short time, where it's rendering literal cartoons of us in real time as we speak. It's animating it in ways that the Pixar people just fantasized about.
Right. Exactly.
It's
And it's taking cues in a meaningful way.
yeah,
Like if I put my fingers together, I can actually interact with a menu here. Like it's already, yeah.
yeah.
And so, right. And so, and I think about, like, I can't help but think about what the work we were doing at that time looked like compared to now. And that's 20 years, right? And the speed of change has increased dramatically. I mean, what our hands are going to look like, what these clumsy, we're going to look back and say, oh my gosh, that was the clumsiest thing
Like,
ever, right?
yeah.
Like,
Just watching
wow,
it jump
now,
around.
yeah. Yeah, it's just incredible, what's going to happen. So yeah, it is amazing.
And then, the fact that it knows about the tool, like I pick up a tool and it knows I'm now using the tool.
Right.
It's just
right.
and that's why I wanted to have you as my first guest to test out this technology and see if it was a viable way to do podcasts, but also kind of get your thoughts on all of it, because this is just, it's such a cool time, and
it really is.
So I think the thing that's interesting is this workspace is free.
Mm-hmm.
The collaboration stuff is free. You can buy a business. I just knocked over my.
Yeah, I just knocked my controller off on the floor too a little while ago. It's like, whoa.
That happens. Now my arm looks all weird. Anyway, but this space is free. And what's interesting is there are paid versions, like for like $15, you can get an Office suite. But the question is, none of it really works with Microsoft Office as far as I know. None of it really works with, I mean, I don't know, maybe, I think personally that Google needs to get into this so that the Google Docs and the whole Google suite can be accessible. It's just mind-boggling to me, the options that are already there versus what will happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, I know just from tools that we've sort of looked at in the industry, as we were developing in ESI Live, we had a virtualization component, in mind with it. And so we looked at some tools, and there are third parties out there that are developing tools that are like not unlike the room we're in, in which you can insert your own geometry and you can interact with it, and it can be animated. So you can have things that move. And we experimented with some of those tools. They're very expensive. Because as you can imagine, these developers are developing for a very small audience right now.
Yeah.
And I think Facebook and some of these companies will enable, by creating an audience that understands, the value of virtualization, they will create the audience that will drive, really drive down the cost of interacting in some of these third-party spaces. I do think, Facebook, Microsoft, some of the big players will lead the way for a while. And it's going to be interesting to see, what's Apple think about this? What's their, how do they play in this space? What does Google do in this space? Clearly they've been aware of it for a long time. So, they're thinking about it in terms of a strategy. I think you will see Microsoft moving into this space with, they announced Mesh. I think, they're gonna head into this space with their Teams platform and the Microsoft stack.
Thank God.
And they will be, much more, they're going to be thinking about how people work in these spaces. How are they productive in these spaces? Facebook, you would expect, is going to be thinking about how people socialize in these spaces. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting. What's music? What's going to happen in the music industry with this space? What's a movie when you don't have to watch it on a screen? You can actually be in it.
So on that, Whoa, I just so I stepped out of my zone and my desk zone and everything. I got to see the real world, like you're faded half in and out.
Yeah.
I'm hoping so much that what's being recorded, what I'm seeing is what you see right now. Because
yeah, I think so. I see you in the chair with the
so.
whiteboard in the background. It's super cool.
That's crazy. But so this is a good point. When I installed YouTube, do you have YouTube on your Oculus?
I don't yet. I haven't installed it on the Oculus.
Get it today. So here's what's cool. So you're talking about experiencing virtual movies and things like that. The first 3D movie I saw was 9/11. And it was surviving 27 hours in the wreckage. And it was the last person pulled out of the wreckage of 9/11. And her narrating her story. And as she's doing it, they're using photographs to make it 3D. So you're standing on the streets of New York and you witness the second plane hitting the tower. And it's not animated. It's all photorealistic. Right, and so you hear people around you in New York, you see things, and she's telling her story, and every once in a while it fades in and she's sitting in front of you in a 3D space. And it's such I'm getting, you can't see it obviously, but I'm getting goosebumps.
That's just powerful. Yeah.
It was cool. It was neat. And then there's another one that's exploring the Titanic. And so it takes you down and lets you see the Titanic, but then they also have it in a virtual world. I mean, it's so crazy how we will be able to physically, I mean, we already can. It's insane. Experience history and witness things like nobody was at Pompeii that's still alive.
Right.
You know, or the Tunguska event.
Yes,
you know,
exactly. But those are things that you're speaking to me in those because those are events that we know things about that could be reconstructed in an accurate fashion, right? So you could re-experience those things even though no one was there, witness or take a picture or anything like that.
So like the Diana thing.
Yep, exactly, right. And so the other one I was going to mention to you is, have you played in Google Earth VR?
No, I saw that it's there, but I haven't played with it yet.
So I'll take your YouTube tip. You need to take the Google Earth VR tip because it is unbelievable. Like you could waste the rest of your life in Google Earth VR.
There's a good chance I will.
Well, because you know how cool Google Earth is, right? And to be able to go to places and stand in the streets and look at these, remarkable either, natural wonders or, stand in Central Park in New York is just unbelievable. And to be able to transport yourself around the globe, with a few clicks is just remarkable. So you have to,
So it's like Google Street View, but in 3D.
It's both, right? So you have this geometric representation of the planet that you can go to places and a surprising amount of the planet is now rendered geometrically. So buildings and everything. So major cities, things like that, you can go into, fairly accurate textured versions of those cities. But then if you go to the street level, it has this really cool street view version that you pop up with your controller. They may have the hand controls there now, where you pop up this sphere and it looks like this big soap bubble and you just jam your head into it and you're in street view and you're like looking around in the photographic, street view, and you can sort of maneuver around in that as well. It's just remarkable. I'm
going to waste days of my life in there. That sounds awesome.
It's super cool.
That sounds very, very cool. I'm really excited about the direction that everything's going. And I think that, I'm not meaning to look away from you too much, but I haven't really taken the time to look around this room, and I didn't realize that there's like a little villa down there, and
right?
There's
exactly.
It's crazy. Like you have a giant, beautiful lake behind you with a bridge.
I didn't see the lake. Yeah, the lake is spectacular.
Isn't that gorgeous? It's just so neat that we can do this. I wish somebody would turn on those fans though. It's a little warm in here.
Yeah, it is getting warm, isn't it? I noticed that too. It's getting a little warm.
And I do like that since we scheduled this for an hour, I like that it's got a little timer up there.
Yeah, exactly. We've got like 13 minutes left now.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, cool.
I'm so happy. I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me in this world. I'm pretty sure this is the first time we've ever met face to face.
You know what? You're right. I think that's crazy, isn't it? Like in this crazy pandemic world, like there's so many people we know as friends that, like, oh gosh, you're right. We've never met. And I wouldn't have, if you'd until you said that, it's like, oh yeah. Of
Holy
course.
cow.
We meet on a regular basis.
Isn't this
Yeah,
appropriate? I mean,
it is
really,
so cool, right?
if we're
Yeah,
going to
it
meet,
is.
this is the way to do it.
Right, for sure. Yeah, for sure. This is super cool.
Well, I've had so much fun, and I think it's so. I really appreciate your time. I know it's valuable, and I've missed talking to you so much.
Yeah,
Um,
it's been great to catch up for
so let
sure.
me ask you this before we kind of wrap things up here.
Hmm.
With the direction, so with what you've experienced today in this space,
Hmm.
give me some solid impressions of what you think, since this is honestly, truly your very first experience with Facebook what is it, workrooms, workspaces, whatever it's called.
Right.
But so tell me about this and how you feel about it, what you think they're going to do with it. Just give me kind of, I want to hear you nerd out a bit. Go for it.
Right. So, yeah. So, this is the first time I've interacted in a space like this one. I am super impressed. When I jumped in here yesterday, I thought, "Whoa, this space is really cool." It gives you that feel of when you first put on your Oculus Quest and you get, in that 3D space, and it's really cool. But, you know, um, I'm used to that, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a really cool space, and the textures are nice and all that. What's crazy is interacting with you in this space, like the rendering of the avatars and the facial movements and the hand gestures are just so realistic. I'm really, really impressed by that, and that gives me that level of comfort
Yeah.
that I mentioned earlier, like that people seem to become comfortable super fast in these virtual spaces. Like in 3D animation, there's the term is jumping out of my head at the moment, but it's
The
it's
Uncanny Valley.
the uncanny valley. That's
Is that
exactly
the
what I'm
one?
looking for.
Nice.
Right. That's exactly the one where, you're really more weirded out by it than feel warm by it. I don't get that here.
Yeah.
Like it feels super comfortable, and somehow this avatar has, captured enough of you that I feel like, hey, there's Steven. Like we're talking, right? This is awesome. And so I am really overwhelmed by that. I think that's really cool. I'm, accustomed to interacting with things in virtual space and geometry and thinking about what can I measure this and how accurate that's going to be. But to have this human interaction in this space is really special. And I
Yeah.
think that is going to drive a future for this that is going to be super exciting. If you ran into that uncanny valley here, it's like, oh, people are maybe not going to go for it.
Yeah. The
I
missing the
will.
legs thing was about it.
It's a little weird. Yeah, it's a little weird,
Yeah.
but maybe
Take some
maybe
getting
that's
used to.
abrupt enough that it doesn't take you to the uncanny valley, I guess.
Yeah.
The thing I will say that I think it needs to improve is, as I sit here today, having the Quest 2 on my head, at first it's not bad. After 50 minutes, it's a little uncomfortable. My face is kind of hot, and
Mhm.
the focus maybe isn't perfect. My eye separation isn't dead on, and those little tiny things that don't bother you in the first 30 minutes or start to build up. And
Yeah.
so people, I think, what their first experiences in this space should be in small doses.
Yeah.
There's certainly, I know early on in my interactions with VR, vertigo and a nauseating feeling was a
Yep.
little problematic. And
It's
I've,
VR
I've got
induced motion sickness. Yeah.
exactly. And I've gotten way past that. You do get accustomed to it, and that doesn't bother me anymore. But just physically, the weight of this headset, it doesn't seem like much at first, but after time, it does. And that's going to improve. I mean, that's the
Hmm.
great news is these things are going to become miniaturized and lighter weight and better. And so that's gonna move this technology along. So being there several years ago and sort of struggling with the things we've struggled with and seeing how far this has come, it's like we're finally getting there. We're getting the momentum. We're going to get off the ground, and this is going to be just amazing. So I'm super excited, Stephen. Thanks a million for inviting me to your conference room and
Yeah.
interacting here, because this has been just fabulous.
It's I say this all the time, but the pleasure truly is mine. I have one last question for you about what you
Sure.
do. The VR spaces that your teams work in. What kind of headsets are they using? I mean, how's the technology different? I mean, I would imagine. I don't know. Tell me. What are you guys working with?
Yeah, so we're working in this very headset. So we use the Quest 2 fairly frequently because it's powerful enough that we can deliver a pretty good virtualized experience with as long as we can optimize the geometry that we're working in. So
Mm-hmm.
the beautiful thing about the Quest 2 is it doesn't require a big workstation to drive it.
Yeah.
We can load an experience on it, put it in the egg shaped case and ship it off to our clients so they can just pop it on and have that experience. And so in limited ways, the Quest 2 is awesome and we're using it. In the labs, we're typically using an HTC wireless system. So similar resolution, similar capability, but we're defining a space, in a room that's physical that we can actually walk around. So, users want to be able to walk around something like a locomotive or, something that's fairly large, a vehicle, something like that. And we, to the extent we can, we provide, a navigation means that allows them to move around for big distances, but they can walk around it in small distances. And the HTC wireless system is really good for that. You kind of hit on that a little earlier. The wireless systems are fantastic. And when, the initial systems were all tethered, the development kits were tethered, and you had this wire. And I never thought it was a big deal until we put on wireless. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
Be able to,
freedom.
Yes, exactly. To be able to walk around with this on and not, have like any limitation is super powerful. And so, honestly, I think one of the most interesting devices out there right now is the Quest 2. And you can go to a variety of vendors and, for $299 or $399, get started in this space. And it's amazing.
I love it. I think it's a great introductory thing. I agree with you, what you said earlier about warning people about the about VR-induced motion sickness. It is a thing. It takes a while to get used to. I haven't experienced it as much here, but I will say that one of the things I noticed too, being a relative, I'm essentially an infant in the VR space. And one of the things that I noticed is that if you just close your eyes for a couple of minutes and let your brain recalibrate, you're fine. One of the games that I saw that was a roller coaster game, that was a free game that came with the Oculus, had a little target on there and said, if you start to feel nauseous, stare at this. And in the game. And I just thought that's smart. That makes sense. But I think this is an exciting time, not only for VR, but for your industry and for what you do. And I can't think of a better guest to be my first guest in the metaverse. Hopefully it's the first of many. For a short time there, I didn't have a desk camera except for on my laptop, which wasn't powerful enough for me to do the meetings I needed to do. So This is a really interesting and potentially viable way to do new meetings. Because you've never been in this space before. Did you have to, when I sent you the link, did you have anything you had to install? I would assume so, right?
I actually went and installed workspaces, went through that process. It was really straightforward. Maybe took me 15 minutes or so, and I was up and running and then, jumped in your room and got to look at it a little bit yesterday. So it was an easy process, and man, what you get for that little bit of work is great. And it's cool. Like you're showing me the, what we call the pancake, here, in the room. That's awesome because it accommodates folks that don't have a Quest 2, to jump into this space. They can still participate. And that's one of the things we've really tried to do at the SI Live is say, hey, if you have, a VR headset and are going to interact in the visualization space, we welcome that. But we're going to accommodate you if you don't. You can jump in on your laptop and have a good experience that way too.
So check this out. So the podcast portion of it, thank you so much for being on the show. Ensys.com is the website, right?
Absolutely.
And if people want to contact you, I'm sure they can figure out ways, preferably just business inquiries. I doubt that you want to have this long of conversations about VR with anybody, but hold on just a sec. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the recording end of this, and I'm going to show you what it looks like to have somebody in the 2D space real quick if you have a minute.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be super cool. Thank you, Steve. And thank you so much for having me on this show, Stephen. It's been
so much
really
fun.
Awesome. I love your show.
Thank you. And it's funny. I said the other day on one of my episodes that as long as I have one listener, I'll keep going. Right.
Well,
fortunately, it's always been more.
You gave me a freaky experience because I was actually working out in the morning, and that's when I listen to podcasts, and you're in my rotation, and I'm listening to your podcast, and all of a sudden you were like, at the end of the show, you're like, and I'm going to have this guest. And so I'm like, oh my God, he's talking about me.
Well, yeah, it was funny because I was like, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver here, but God, I want to get Chuck Fox on here. I got to get him on. Like, I've wanted you on this show for like 2 years since I started doing it. So yeah, it's definitely overdue for us to have this conversation. So thank you.
Well, I'm so excited to be here because it's a great moment for me too. I love your show, so it's fun.
The Deep Gripping Reality is brought to you by marketingstrategy.com. Check it out.